Species Recovery Plan is a document that describes the current status, threats, and planned methods for increasing population sizes of threatened species. Species recovery plans set out the research and outline management actions which are crucial in order to recover declining species. They aim to improve the long-term survival of these threatened species in the wild. There are single species and multi-species recovery plans. Each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Looking at both types of recovery plans, the overall evidence from studies shows that species recovery plans do not have a significant effect on improving the long-term survival of threatened species. It is important to determine the strengths and weaknesses of species recovery plans before implementing them, as it involves funding from the government and time and effort from government agencies. Species numbers are declining rapidly in Australia, so evaluation of recovery plans is urgent to determine if they're actually working before it's too late. Recovery planning has become a key process in the long-term management of threatened species in Australia. Recently, there has been a shift from single species recovery plans towards multiple species recovery plans. Single species recovery plans tend to focus on a particular species and its threat, whereas multi-species recovery plans focus on several species and the multiple threats which they're faced with. Single species recovery plans may benefit species with unique needs and are often detailed. The downside to single species recovery plans is that they don't consider interactions between focus species and other species, and they only consider the threats specific to the single species. Due to the specificity of single species recovery plans, it leads to very biased information on the focus species. Multi-species recovery plans consider how species interact with each other, as well as a wide range of threats in context with the ecosystem. A study conducted by the School of Natural Resources and Management at the University of Michigan found that the issue with these recovery plans is that they can be too large, which may actually hinder their implementation. James Watson and colleagues from the Commonwealth Environmental Research Facility found in an evaluation of recovery plans conducted in 2011 that they can also be quite costly, which is an issue as there is already a lack of funding. Having several species in a recovery plan can make it difficult to decide on priorities, as some species require more attention than others. The information in multi-species recovery plans is broad, and they often lack species-specific information, which can especially be a problem when trying to recover species near extinction. Overall, species recovery plans act as a foundation for building on conservation efforts and can also help scientists to become more knowledgeable on species. But research shows that the weaknesses far outweigh the strengths. The first major weakness is the lack of funding from the Australian government, which leads to a lack of or poor implementation of recovery plans. Species recovery plans are also biased. According to Watson and his colleagues in evaluating threatened species recovery planning in Australia in 2011, recovery plans tend to focus on large and charismatic animals and often neglect invertebrates, fish, and reptiles. Watson and his colleagues also state that recovery plans only cover about 20% of threatened species listed under the EPBC Act. According to a study conducted by Dormus and Pagel in 2001, the criteria for determining whether species have recovered can often be set too low, giving false information on the recovery of the species. Majority of research shows that whether a species recovery plan is applied or not, there is no significant effect on species threat status. In order for species recovery plans to become effective, firstly there needs to be sufficient funding from the Australian government, otherwise recovery plans will not progress. Secondly, recovery plans need to be prioritised by implementing them upon the most threatened species first and species in which they interact with. There also needs to be a greater number of recovery plans for species, as not many which are actually threatened have a recovery plan. The bar needs to be risen for the criteria for determining a species recovery, otherwise recovery plans become pointless as they are not actually improving species numbers. Goals for recovery plans need to be more straightforward and clear in order to truly determine if they have been effective. At this stage, species recovery plans don't seem to be doing a great deal of improvement for species numbers, so recommendations need to be considered, or something else needs to be done about the decline in threatened species numbers in Australia before it's too late.